Bonjour, Nindawe Maguniduk, my relatives. I want to bring greetings. Today is Saturday, November 22nd, 2025. I want to welcome you to another update. In this update, I want to respond to a CBC article that came out on Thursday, November the 18th, 2025. In this article, there seems to be a suggestion that I am responsible for Peguis losing the land known as the Meadows, as well as potentially $10 million of treaty land entitlement monies. This is completely false. This unusual transaction is only the latest in a series of bad deals that were spearheaded by former Chief Glenn Hutson, starting with the Assiniboine Downs, the bridging finance debacle, the M. Jardine investment that's seen us lose millions, and many more. As a chief and council, we continue to do our best to clean up the mess that he has left behind. I want to clarify the background to the Meadows purchase and the eventual sale. First, I played no role in the purchase or in the structure of the loan, which, as the article notes, is highly unusual. Peguis put in $10 million of equity and couldn't obtain financing for a $2.5 million loan? Banks would normally be fighting to provide such financing if a borrower came to them with that much equity. Enter Andrew Marquez, who structured a $5.5 million loan to a corporation owned by the Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust, setting up a shell company owned by his wife that charged approximately 9%, a ridiculously high interest rate. The true lender was Canadian Western Bank, though none of the details of their lending agreement have been provided. After paying the $2.5 million for the purchase, Marquez controlled the remaining $3 million, much of which he paid to himself. All of this is now subject to litigation that Peguis has brought against Andrew Marquez and his related companies. My understanding is the Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust was created to access the third-party funding, as there are significant limitations under the terms of the Treaty Land Entitlement Trust. Contrary to the Treaty Land Entitlement Agreement and the Treaty Land Entitlement Trust, somehow $10 million was accessed for the Meadows purchase. In order for this to occur, there are strict requirements of the Treaty Land Entitlement Trust to bring a transfer from one trust to another. This must involve a vote. This did not happen, and it is in breach of the Treaty Land Entitlement Trust. Second, treaty land entitlement funds may only be used to acquire lands for addition to reserve. This was never the intent of the Meadows transaction, which constitutes another breach of the Treaty Land Entitlement and the Treaty Land Entitlement Trust. There is a complete lack of transparency, and as we see from the article, and further denial and shift of blame, a lack of accountability on the part of the former real estate trustees. They have not delivered audits and have not reported to the membership or chief and council as required by their trust agreement. It's absurd for the trustees to say, well, we could have sold it to Swan River, but Chief Bird said no. If that's the case, then why wouldn't I have been informed of this transaction? The answer is that we have been told repeatedly to stay out of it, quote unquote, and that we don't have to answer to chief and council, quote unquote. As the article points out, Peguis had begun the litigation against Marquez for breach of fiduciary duty prior to the transfer of these lands from the Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust to his company. We asked the real estate trustees to take no action in relation to the Meadows. Our CFO reached out to them to request a meeting to to look at options for restructuring the loan. They refused. They refused the offer of assistance, and contrary to Council's request to not take any actions in relation to the meadows, the majority of the lands were sold, and we are currently reviewing our legal options around this sale. The second transaction, also subject to the litigation, relates to the sale of the Wellington property, something that Marquez and the former trustees of the Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust have bragged as generating $1.8 million in profit for Peguis. New real estate trustees were recently elected, and they have advised us that the trust has no money. Since I took office, I've been asking, where is the money? The new trustees have been directed to get all documentation on the Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust, including the sale of Wellington. But this has been a slow, painful process. The information is not forthcoming. So the question is why? If this is such a great deal and everything is on the up and up, why then is the information not being shared with Chief and Council on behalf of membership? Our own members have sat and continue to sit as trustees, yet we as a nation cannot access certain documents requested by the elected leaders and our lawyers. My point is this, that we must question the trustees who were involved in the deal, as well as any other individual who seeks to do business without involving our nation. In the Meadows case, we are talking about $10 million plus the lands that Peguis purchased after 26 years of negotiations. How can this type of deal be structured and supported by some of our own people? We are now told that $10 million will be reimbursed to us after 7 years without any security and at a ridiculously low interest rate, a loan that is nowhere near the 9% that was used against us in the purchase of the meadows. Yet some, and I emphasize some, of our former trustees believe this was a good deal for Peguis. When did Peguis get into the business of lending below the rates that chartered banks charge? If something is too good to be true, then it's probably not true. They can lay blame, but they must be held accountable. There is nothing transparent in the way business has been conducted. Peguis is informed after the fact. If things go sideways, it's the nation's fault. And how convenient is it to shift the blame on me? This is not business as usual. There is a new chief and council who do not operate according to this business as usual model. We will ask questions, and we will seek out members who have extensive business and financial background knowledge. They are the ones we will call upon to provide us the direction that is needed. In addition, the people will be made aware of any future opportunities presented to Peguis. Membership will be informed and involved. We will account for every dollar accessed through the trusts. As the chief, I will be accountable for my actions. In saying this, we must be accountable for every business transaction we make, and we must hold every entity accountable. Our members deserve it. I will not accept responsibility for someone else's actions. Miigwech, and thank you for your time.